Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. We made it to OJ. Let's check out our settings. Looks good. We're on August 21st, the first part. And it'll take us today to get through this. We'll have a little bit of the second part. And then we should finish August 21st tomorrow. We should. If not, it'll just be a couple minutes. But if we have any sidebars, we definitely will. And then it's August 22nd, 23rd, and then jumps to 25th, and then boom. Then it's the 28th. Oh, wait, no. We wanted to get to the 29th. I always forget that. I keep thinking it's the 28th where the show starts, and no. That's the last day. We're getting closer, though. Here we go.
Going over the boards and going over his testimony, and Dr. DeForest is their expert and their rebuttal witness. More than this, we can't do. I can endeavor to try. Oh, and those are color Xeroxes, and they're terrific. So I don't know what else it is that they want by way of discovery. I guess, I'm unfamiliar with rules in this jurisdiction extensively, I guess, but the only other thing they could possibly want is for me to open up my files and show them the entire work product. This is unprecedented in my experience as a criminal defense lawyer. They have had an opportunity to talk with this man, to see every picture, to look at everything he's going to say prior to his testimony, go over it with a fine-tooth comb.
So all I need to do is ask Mr. Goldberg, what more do you want?
I don't know what else. Yeah, what more do they want?
All right.
Well, I want more, Your Honor, and I would have liked it much, much earlier. And I'm not prepared to give an in-depth argument on this issue right now because I don't have any notes as to dates and when I receive things. The generality is that the defense has dumped an enormous amount of documentation that is relevant to Henry Lee within the last few weeks relating to a number of different examinations of different items of evidence, and basically his testimony is going to cover the gamut of almost everything that came from the crime scene. So I would like to make at some point a much more extensive argument, obviously it will have to be in the very near future, about discovery sanctions because it has impaired our capacity to be ready, and I'm simply not prepared now to tell you, well, this report came from a examination in February and we didn't receive it until just 2 weeks ago. I just can't do that at this point, but I will be able to.
When?
I'll try to get that together as soon as I'm out of court on Mr. Regal. I worked all day on Saturday and Sunday on Henry Lee and trying to prepare to the best of my ability with a great quantity of material. Now, the photographs that are being referred to, counsel has told, come from a variety of different examinations. Some of them were from the Albany trip. Some of them are from the LAPD
All right. Well, Mr.
examinations.
Goldberg, forgive me for interrupting you, but if you're not prepared to address the issue at this point, why don't we start with the jury with Mr. Regal? At least give them something to do today. You and your other staff that are assisting you can put together your arguments concerning Dr. Lee, and we'll take it up at that time.
May I just add one thing, Your Honor? And the only reason why it might be helpful to address this now is on this very limited issue of the photographs, setting everything else aside. I've asked counsel for the actual photographs, and he said that the color Xeroxes are sufficient. That might be helpful to resolve now because it will probably take them some time to provide those to me if the court feels that the people are entitled to them. So the court might want to decide that now so that they can get those photographs to me as quickly as possible. Now, the reason why we believe that we're entitled to the actual photographs as opposed to Xerox copies, color Xerox copies, is that in this case, as the court knows, we have put photographs up on the Elmo, and very frequently the defense will point out to some little speck somewhere or the absence of some speck somewhere, or staple holes in the case of that exhibit, and hinge a massive theory of the case around the existence or non-existence of that speck. These photographs are purportedly examination quality photographs of things like impressions, of things like hair and trace material in soil and the like.
How many photographs are we talking about?
Well, there are approximately, and counsel could give you a more accurate estimate than I could, approximately, I'd say 50 pages of discovery containing photographs, and each page contains 2 or 3 photos. And Mr. Scheck perhaps has quantified that.
I can just get to the point, maybe we can solve this. Every photograph that we intend to introduce into evidence and that's on those boards, they can have. Just so you know, the dispute is that we gave them more. We gave them photographs from Albany, and I thank him for pronouncing Albany as Albany. We gave them that. So now what he's saying is, I want photocopies, not Xerox copies, of all these other things that you're not going to introduce that you gave to us, which you didn't have to give in the first place. Now, I only have one set of those at the present time. in terms of photographs, and I gave him Xerox copies of it. And I said to him,
These are color Xerox copies.
these are color Xerox copies. I've said, and they're terrific. And I said to him, if there's any particular one of these photographs that we don't intend to introduce into evidence, he's going to get all the ones we intend to introduce, which I submit is our only legal obligation here. If you want another one of those and you need to see it, I'll give you that print. So
All right,
I don't know
seems like
what
a
this is all
non-dispute
about.
then. All right,
Well-
settle it over the lunch hour. Give him whatever photographs he wants that you're not going to use.
Well, I'd like all the ones that, I'd like all of them.
Now, you're being unreasonable. They've given you color photographs. They can exhibit to you the originals. He's indicated he'll give anyone that they're not going to use. Settle it between yourselves at lunch. You guys are wasting my time here. All right, let's have the jury. Are they upstairs? All right, bring
You've
them.
been wasting my time for months.
Record in the Simpson matter, all parties are again present. Jury is not present. Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. All right, and let the record reflect that we've now been rejoined by all
Nope,
members
now
of our
we have
jury
to
panel.
stop.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Stop, OJ. We already know the
My
end.
apologies to you for the late start this morning. Had a number of issues that we needed to determine out of your presence. I also wanted to give you fair warning. There's one major issue that I need to resolve with the lawyers that is coming up. My guess is that it will take me about 20 hours to examine the issues and the evidence that's being presented to me. And I anticipate using my evening hours to try to do most of that, but it may also include some court time. And I just wanted to give you a warning that there may be substantial dark time coming up this week, just so you know. All right, the defense may call the next witness.
Defense calls Larry Regal.
All right, Mr. Regal. Mrs. Robertson.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in cause not only before this court, to be the truth and worth of the nothing but the truth and help of God? I do. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state your full birth and last name for the record.
My name is John Larry Regal. It's John, Larry, Larry, Regal, Ragle.
Mr. Blazer.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Regal, you're here to testify as an expert in crime scene processing techniques, are you not?
That's correct.
Now, could you give us a brief description of your undergraduate training, educational background?
I attended the University of California at Berkeley, and I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in criminalistics, which is now called forensic science at Berkeley, in 1959.
And do you have any specific training as a police officer?
Yes.
And what does that training consist of?
I'm a graduate of the California Peace Officers Association Academy,
And what year did you graduate from the academy?
1957.
Now, could you describe your employment between 1956 and 1960?
In 1956, I became a member of the Berkeley Police Department. I was a patrolman and an investigator until 1960.
And in 1960, where did you go?
1960, I became an employee of the Orange County Sheriff's Department here in California.
And in your capacity with the Orange County Sheriff's Department now that was from 1960 to what year?
1989,
And from 1960 to 1976, did you have a particular area that you worked in?
yes.
And what was that?
My assignment was as a general criminalist.
And what was the nature of your responsibilities as a general criminalist?
As a generalist, I investigated all types of crimes, either at the crime scene or analyzing evidence in court and testifying to my findings in court.
During that period of time, did you conduct any investigations into homicides?
Yes,
Any investigations into double homicides?
yes.
Was your primary responsibility investigating crime scenes themselves?
No.
What was your primary responsibility?
My primary responsibility was analyzing evidence.
That would be after evidence was collected at a crime scene, it would be your job to analyze it.
Yes.
Now, from 1976 to 1989, what was your position?
In 1976, I was promoted to, at that time, what was called a chief criminalist, and that was the manager of the crime laboratory, the toxicology laboratory.
Is that basically the person that's in charge of the whole crime lab?
Yes.
And you held that position until what date? What year?
Technically, in 1977, that position was changed, and the title became the Director of Forensic Sciences. So actually, I held the position of Chief Criminalist for 1 year. In 1977, the crime laboratory and the toxicology laboratory was combined with the Identification Bureau, which is all the crime scene investigators, and the coroner's office.
Would it be fair to say that your job was similar to Michelle Kessler's job in Los Angeles County? That your job in Orange County was similar?
You could say that. There was additional responsibilities.
Are there additional responsibilities that you had?
Yes.
And what did those consist of?
The coroner's office, for one, was an organization that investigates all types of deaths, not just deaths that are suspected crimes. The Crime Scene Identification Bureau and the Cal ID Bureau, which is the automated fingerprint system, and in the coroner's toxicology section. And those are not part of the Los Angeles Police Department SID.
Now, in your capacity as the director of the Orange County Crime Lab, approximately how many people did you supervise at any given time?
Well, the lab grew during that period of time, and by the time I retired, there were between 100 and 110 employees.
And how many of those people were criminalists or toxicologists?
Approximately 60.
What types of cases would you respond to, or your people would respond to, from the Orange County Crime Lab?
In the criminalistic section, which would be similar to Los Angeles Police Department's SID, the types of crime scenes that we responded to would be question deaths, drug laboratories, post-bomb detonation scenes, arsons.
Now, did you go to crime scenes that were being processed just by the Orange County Sheriff's Department or other police agencies in Orange County?
Both.
Now, I think you indicated that the coroner's office was also under your direction at some point in time. What period of time was that?
From 1977 until 1986 or 85, right in that time, or 9 years.
Now, at the time that you retired from the Orange County Crime Lab, is it accurate to say that that was considered to be one of the best crime labs in the country?
It was, and I believe it still is.
Can you give me a rough estimate of the total number of crime scenes well, let me ask you this about homicides. How many homicides per year are there in Orange County?
The average would be around 150. It has been, starting when I first was an employee of the department, somewhere around 50 to 60, and by the end of my career, homicides were somewhere in the number of 200.
And approximately how many of those homicides would your office be involved in processing the crime scene?
Approximately half.
Now, the other half would be processed by who?
By some of the cities the 2 cities had crime laboratories, small crime laboratories, or by their field evidence technicians.
For all of the homicides handled by the Orange County Sheriff's Department, would it be your responsibility or the people working for you to process those scenes?
Yes.
Since your retirement in 1989, what have you been doing?
Primarily, I've been acting as a consultant in the management areas of forensic science.
And do you have a company that has a name?
Yes.
What is that?
The Center of Forensic Sciences.
Now, when you say consulting, what sorts of consulting do you do?
It really falls in a couple of different categories. One would be the needs assessment, that is, what type of response should a crime laboratory be able to offer to the criminal justice system, to all levels of the criminal justice system. And then also in the area of laboratory design, space allocations relative to staffing and caseload.
Have you been involved over your career with designing crime labs or redesigning crime labs?
Both.
Can you give us just a couple of examples?
Well, the laboratory in Orange County is the one I'm most familiar with, because that laboratory was redesigned on several occasions unsuccessfully. That is, we made a design, but nothing ever happened with that design. But ultimately, at the conclusion of my employment, the county agreed to build a new forensic science facility.
And have you worked for other counties as a consultant?
I also want to say that I was also involved in the design of what is called the Forensic Center in Orange County, which is the morgue. And I have worked for other counties.
What other counties have you worked for?
As a consultant, after I retired, San Diego County and Contra Costa County. Before I retired, Ventura County, Santa Clara County, and San Diego County.
And does that involve law enforcement officials from those counties contacting you and retaining you to help them with their crime labs?
Yes.
Now, do you have any teaching experience?
Yes.
Are you currently teaching classes?
Yes, I am.
And what's the subject matter of the classes that you teach now?
The class that I'm teaching for the University of California at Los Angeles is a class called Crime Scene Investigation, or Field Evidence Technician class.
And just generally, what does that encompass?
It encompasses the process of processing a crime scene, the entire scope of processing a crime scene.
And how long have you been teaching either that course or other courses that have the same topic?
That course started in 1968 and is essentially unchanged in its nature, although there have been technical improvements in crime scene processing.
Now, how long does that class take, the way it is now?
The class is a two-week class involving the students being at the classroom 8 hours a day.
And what's the students that take your class, what are they primarily made up of?
Right now it's about a 50-50 split. That is, about half of the students are police officers, sworn police officers, and the other half are civilian employees of law enforcement agencies. Occasionally there's a student who is seeking employment in some sort of law enforcement agency that takes a class.
Now, did you want to add something about the length of time that your classes take?
Well, I didn't want to imply that I was involved in the class for the entire 2 weeks. My part of the class is 2 days of each session.
Now, do you have any FBI agents in your class?
There have been, yes.
Did you, has the FBI been sending people to your class partly as a result of your involvement in this case? Well, during your work on this case for the defense, have you had contact with FBI agents?
Yes.
And since that,
Sustained.
approximately how many people have attended your class since it started in 1968?
In the neighborhood of 4,000.
Have any people from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department attended your classes?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
I don't know how many. It would be the total number of the people assigned to their Crime Scene Investigation Bureau.
To your knowledge, has anyone from the LA Police Department, SID, ever come to any of your classes?
No.
Have you been a lecturer at any law school?
Yes.
And where's that?
In Orange County.
Have you ever testified as an expert in court?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
If you include every type of case, close to 1,000 times.
And is that primarily when you were working with the Orange County Crime Lab?
Exclusively.
During that period of time, were you ever...
I was going to say, I've testified a few times in Berkeley on a rare occasion.
But most of your experience testifying has been in your capacity with the Orange County Crime Lab.
That's correct.
Have you ever been called as a witness by the defense?
Yes.
Approximately how many times? Wait, let me limit that to when you were with the Orange County Crime Lab.
5 or 6 times.
And was that as a result of the defense retaining you or for some other reason?
That was some other reason.
And what would that be?
The results of my examination in the laboratory favored their client.
Could you describe the professional organizations that you belong to?
I'm a member and a past president of the California Association of Criminalists, CAC. I'm a member emeritus of the California Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and I'm a member emeritus of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors.
Have you received any appointments during your career in your area of expertise?
Yes.
What sorts of appointments?
I've been a member of the California Department of Justice DNA Advisory Committee. That was part of the Attorney General's study on DNA. I was a member of the California Department of Justice, what they call CCI, which is the California Criminalistics Institute, which is a training organization, and that role included recommending types of classes and training that would benefit crime laboratory employees. I was a member of the California Department of Justice's CalID user committee. The user committee was a group of people like myself who were managers of laboratories that were in the process of installing the California computerized fingerprint identification system called
Okay,
CalID.
okay, okay. Please get to the
And
meat.
I've been a member of
Please.
the State of California Epidemiology Study Group, and I was a member and the chairperson of the FBI Committee on what was called Forensic Science Operations and Procedures Committee, which was a committee that recommended to the FBI training section the types of research and the types of classes that would be most beneficial to law enforcement agencies.
Who appointed you to that FBI committee?
The president of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors, or the board, I'm not sure which. I think as a group, they make those appointments.
Do you hold any licenses or certificates in your area of expertise?
Technically, no longer.
Have you held licenses?
Yes.
And why don't you tell us what those are?
At one time, I was licensed as a supervisor of the forensic alcohol analysis, a state license. I also was certified as a generalist in the field of criminalistics by the California Association of Criminalists, and that particular certification is now defunct. It expired after 5 years. Actually, it didn't really expire after 5 years. It was changed to a different organization, and I have to take a new examination this year if I'm going to be certified again.
Now, is that the organization that provides accreditation to crime labs as well? Or is that the American Association?
It's not the same. No, it's a different board.
Do you know whether the California Association of Criminalists still certifies criminalists?
No, they don't.
And who does that now?
The American Board of Criminalistics.
Have you published any articles or made any presentations concerning your field of expertise?
Yes.
Could you describe briefly what some of those publications and presentations are?
Early on, I did some presentations on toxicology tests that I had developed in the laboratory on determining amphetamines and amphetamine-type compounds in body fluids. I published not an article, but a chapter on forensic science in a textbook that was generally called Principles of Investigation, or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. I made presentations at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences on 2 particular cases that I felt were something that the scientific community should be aware of.
And one of those involved the falsification of evidence?
Yes, it did.
And tell us briefly what that was about.
Sustain.
You currently have a book that's in the process of being published.
Yes, I do.
And what's the name of that book?
Crime Scenes.
Is that a textbook or is that a general interest book?
It's a general interest book.
And was that book completed prior to the time that you were hired to work on this case?
Yes, it was.
But it hasn't yet been published, has it?
It's been published. It'll be released this year sometime.
During your tenure with the Orange County Crime Lab, did you ever have any experiences with outbreaks of contamination?
Yes.
And what was the response to the outbreak of contamination that you had experience with?
Well, there's no foundation for
Sustain.
qualifications at this time.
Also vague.
Prior to being retained by the defense in the Simpson case, had you been hired by the defense in any other criminal cases?
Yes.
And approximately how many?
2.
Were those large cases like this one, or were they relatively minor cases?
Well, they were, I don't know if you could call them relatively minor. My aspect in the case was relatively minor.
Have there been other instances where you've been asked to work on the defense side of criminal cases where you've refused?
Yes.
Does that happen fairly frequently?
No.
Now, you've received compensation for your services during this case, have you not?
Yes, I have.
And when did you first become involved with the Simpson case?
In the latter part of June of 1994,
And that was at whose behest?
Dr. Henry Lee asked if I could be of some assistance.
And have you been involved working with the defense on a somewhat continuous basis since that time?
Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach on a matter?
What's the report? All right, thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Mr. Regal, you indicated that you first became involved approximately June 26th of last year.
Yes.
And have you been regularly involved in the case on a semi-continuous basis since that time?
Yes.
And has that involved numerous meetings and sessions where we've discussed crime scene processing issues?
Yes, it has.
And have you watched much of the testimony in this case on television about crime scene processing from the detectives as well as the forensic people as well as the coroner?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us approximately how much you've been paid so far in this case?
To date, approximately $35,000.
And what is your regular billing rate?
My regular billing rate would be $200. That's not what I've been charging in this case.
And what have you been charging in this case?
For attending the meetings, half of that, $100 an hour. For monitoring testimony on TV, $50 an hour.
And does the amount that you've been paid so far, does that cover everything you've done, or do you have a certain amount that you'll be billing after this?
The last bill I submitted included June, and I haven't been paid for that, or possibly, yeah, June. I didn't do anything in July, and now this month.
Mr. Regal, given your training and experience in the area of crime scene processing, do you have an understanding of the minimum standard of practice which should be used to process crime scenes?
Yes, I do.
Now, did I ask you to try and break down the processing of a crime scene into some categories for me?
Yes, you did.
Your Honor, could we have two slides marked next in order? 1326, A and B.
Fine, A and B. Do you have any more you need to show, Mr. With the court clerk, please.
We have 1326A, please. Mr. Regal, can you see the monitor there to your right?
Yes, I can.
And the categories on the chart: recognition of evidence, protection of evidence, documentation, collection, and preservation. Are those the categories that you broke down the various steps of crime scene processing into?
Yes.
Could you tell us briefly what we want to go through each of those categories? What you mean by the term recognition of evidence?
The recognition of evidence in this context means that the individual, either the police officer or the field evidence technician or the criminalist, has either an innate ability, an intuition, or special training in what types of evidence would be important at a particular crime scene. Since every crime scene, the evidence varies, they have to be aware of the consequences and the significance of particular types of evidence, and then set forth some method of capturing that.
And the term protection of evidence, what do you mean by that?
The protection of evidence in relation to the first category, the recognition, both of those are sort of ongoing processes throughout any crime scene investigation. The protection specifically is taking some measure that will assure that that evidence isn't changed once the investigative team arrives at the scene. So that the concept here is that, if they could, they would freeze the entire evidence and they would pick it up and take it to some safe haven. So they set up barriers, they maintain a log of the people who come in and out of the crime scene, and most importantly, they minimize the type and the number of people that come in and out of the crime scene.
Now, the term documentation, how are you using that term?
That is an all-encompassing term that would include the specifics of the location of each item that is believed to be evidence at the time, what appears to be relevant to the investigation at the time. And it includes photography, at least 3 different types of photographs, a general photograph of the scene where this object might be seen off in the distance, a close-up photograph of it, what I would call an orientation photograph, and then a very close-up photograph where there is some documentation as to the size and the nature of that particular item, what it might be. Then those items that are considered relevant are measured very precisely relative to some fixed objects at the crime scene, so that if it's necessary, that whole crime scene could be reconstructed, and people who weren't at the crime scene to begin with could recognize and understand where each item of evidence was. And then finally, the evidence's documentation carries on into some of these other phases, which is the collection of the evidence.
And now collection, how are you using that term?
The collection would be the physical picking up of the object in such a way that its value as evidence is maintained. And it may be packaged, it may be something that has to be carried to maintain its integrity, its originality. It might have to be packaged in something to just carry it in your hands, like a pizza box or some type of open container like that. A loaded weapon, as an example.
And preservation of the crime scene, what does that refer to, preservation of the evidence?
The preservation of the evidence, again, is an ongoing subject. It pertains to maintaining that evidence in as close to its original condition as possible. And that begins, obviously, with the protection of the evidence so nothing happens to it, and then ultimately in the way it is packaged, so it's packaged in something that accommodates the object, that doesn't add to any destruction of the evidence, that doesn't change the nature of the evidence, and then the preservation goes on until then how that evidence is stored. Some objects have to be stored frozen, some refrigerated, some dry.
When you talk about protection of the evidence and keeping it in its original condition, does that include also the any trace evidence that might be on pieces of evidence in terms of maintaining that it's in the same place when it was found as when it's collected?
Yes, it does.
Why is it important that these steps be done properly?
The main reason is that if evidence is in any way degraded or altered, its potential, what I call individuality, its uniqueness, can change, can be lost. Obviously, if evidence is not recognized, go back to step one in this outline. If evidence is not recognized or properly documented or collected, it can leave a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, many crime scenes contain a lot of information that could answer questions, and so if these things are not done, evidence of a person's involvement might be overlooked, or evidence of a person's non-involvement might be overlooked.
My dad had
Use
glasses
an
like
analogy
that.
with me when we were discussing this of a dictionary. Could you explain that to the jurors, please?
And sort of a simplistic statement that I said is that every crime scene is like a book or a dictionary. I mean, if you know where to open up the pages and look up the information, you can answer many questions. And most crime scenes, not all, but most crime scenes are loaded with information if the crime scene team is trained and interested in finding this information.
And what are the consequences that can result when this is not done properly?
Well, you miss the information. What I mentioned a moment ago, particularly, is
Sustained. Next question.
Well, you talked about evidence losing its individuality. What did you mean by that?
a good example of that would be like if the fingerprint was discovered at a crime scene that had all the detail that could be established to show ownership of that fingerprint, and it is not collected properly or ignored until somebody smudges it, and now all you can say is it's a fingerprint. It might have fingerprint characteristics, but the fine detail is now missing, and the fine detail is what is necessary, for identification.
Now, given the resources available to the Los Angeles Police Department, do you have an opinion as to whether their processing of the crime scenes in this case, and by crime scenes I'm talking about Rockingham and Bundy, fell above or below minimum standards of practice?
Not relevant, Your Honor, no foundation.
Foundation sustained.
Are you familiar with the resources available to the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes,
Are you familiar with their crime lab?
somewhat.
And have you followed all the testimony about the manner in which the crime scenes were processed in this case?
Yes, I have.
And you're familiar with their crime scene truck and the equipment that they've testified to that they have available to them?
Yes.
Now, do you have an opinion, with that understanding in mind, do you have an opinion as to whether their processing of the crime scenes in this case fell above or below a minimum standard of practice?
Still no foundation, not relevant, calls for opinion or speculation.
You can answer.
Yes, I have an opinion
And what is that opinion?
that it fell below a minimum standard.
Now, what is your basis for that opinion?
the basis of the opinion, in my opinion, that it fell below a minimum standard.
I'm going to check. Calls for a narrative.
Oral. You can answer the question.
The outcome
Good morning,
of the evidence,
Josh.
the things that occurred to the evidence that caused it to lose some of its individuality, some of the items that were contaminated at the evidence in the sense that, for instance, there was something placed over a body at that crime scene, which was a mistake in the sense of the choice of whatever it was. Not a mistake necessarily to cover a body if it's in public view and there's some question of just a humanistic aspect of covering up the remains of somebody.
Well, let's talk about that specifically. You're familiar with the testimony that a blanket was removed from inside Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium and was placed over her body.
Yes, I am.
And when you indicate that that was a mistake, could you tell us which aspect of that is a mistake?
Well, there are really two aspects. The first is the fact that they picked something from the crime scene.
Again, this is not relevant. This is to our previous argument this morning.
Noted. Thank you. Overruled.
They selected something from the crime scene and used that. And it leaves a lot of unanswered questions as to the condition of whatever it was they picked, I believe a blanket. But the biggest problem, from my perspective, is that they then did not collect that blanket and retain it for whatever evidential value it might have had. Because it was in contact with one of the bodies, there are all kinds of possibilities of transfers from, if not from the blanket to the body, from the body to the blanket. And that could have been helpful, and it's just something that should have been done.
Now, you've indicated that there may be humanistic reasons to cover a body at a crime scene. Are there any legitimate forensic or investigative reasons for covering a body at a crime scene?
Only if weather conditions would cause that need.
I suppose hypothetically that the blanket that was used had recently been laundered. Does that make any difference in your view?
No.
Why not?
Well, you still don't, unless you have the blanket to look at, you still don't know what might have been on it or not on it, and more importantly, you don't know what was transferred to it after it was used.
Now, you're familiar with the testimony that there were some blood droplets on the back of Nicole Brown Simpson.
Yes.
In your opinion, is the manner in which that was handled proper?
No.
What? Please explain your answer.
Well, that obviously is very important evidence, and it was not collected at the crime scene, and there was some explanation as to why it was not collected at the crime scene, which I find unacceptable.
What's your understanding of that explanation?
Well, this is calls for hearsay.
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
Well, is your opinion based on your understanding of what the reason was that was not collected?
Can I answer that in a narrative form?
Nope.
Well,
What's the basis of your understanding? Was
What's-
it the testimony that you heard?
Yes.
All right. Proceed.
and what's your understanding of that testimony?
That it was not the job of the criminalist, it was the job of the coroners to collect that sample.
And when you say that's not acceptable, what do you mean by that?
Well, unless the coroner's experts are at the scene, by putting the body in a body bag, all that evidence is destroyed, or
Is
at
it
least contaminated.
Is it important in your view that the coroner's office, the scientific investigation division people, and the detectives work closely together?
Is it my observation that they work closely together?
No, is it your opinion that they should?
That they should, yes,
And from what point in the investigation should that occur?
from the very beginning.
Now, let me ask you some questions about timing of when various people were called to this crime scene occurred. Are you familiar with the time frame in which the criminalists were called, the coroners were called?
Yes, I am.
Now, what's your understanding of when the bodies were found?
12:15 a.m.
And when was the first call to the criminalists, approximately?
My understanding is it's 5:30.
And what's your understanding as to when criminalists arrived at the Bundy scene to begin processing that scene, approximately?
7 a.m.
Is there any, in your opinion, any legitimate investigative or forensic reason to be served by not calling criminalists for approximately 10 hours to the primary crime scene? Let me back up one question. Did you, what's your understanding of when the criminalists arrived at the Bundy scene to begin processing that?
At the Bundy scene?
Yes.
I believe 10:15, or in that time frame, 10:15, I believe.
Now, in your opinion, is there any legitimate investigative or forensic reason or purpose to be served by not having the criminalist at the primary crime scene for 10 hours?
No.
And what's your understanding as to when the criminalists began processing Rockingham?
It really doesn't matter, sir.
Began processing
Sir.
Rockingham
Yes, or arrived at
at
Rockingham.
7 a.m.
This does not matter.
We've had testimony that the detectives, Lang, Van Adder, Phillips, and Furman, left the Bundy crime scene at approximately 5 o'clock in the morning to make a death notification to Mr. Simpson. In your opinion, is that an appropriate procedure to take?
No.
Sustained.
In your view, is there any legitimate investigative or forensic purpose for the investigating detectives to leave the primary crime scene for a period of time to make a death notification?
Sustained.
How many people does it generally take to make a death notification?
Sustained. Foundational problem with all that line of questioning.
Well, did you watch the testimony of the detectives in this case as to when they went to Rockingham and for what purpose?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on whether it's an appropriate procedure to use in investigating a crime scene to have all the detectives leave the primary crime scene to go to what might be a secondary scene?
Sustained.
Mr. Regal, do you have any experience on the procedures that are used to make death notifications in homicide cases?
Yes, I do.
And what does that experience consist of?
As the director and in charge of the day-to-day operations of the Orange County Coroner's Division, I'm aware of how notifications are made.
And do you have an opinion on the appropriateness of having 4 detectives leave the primary crime scene to go to a secondary scene to make a death notification?
Sustained. Let's abandon this line of questioning on the foundation.
I'm sorry?
Foundation. It's not there.
In your opinion, what is the importance of having criminalists respond to a crime scene as soon as possible?
The reason that you would want criminals to come to a crime scene as soon as possible is the nature of some evidence is in question, is perishable. And you never know what weather conditions may be. So the sooner they arrive, the less chance of any degradation or loss of evidence.
Now, when you say some evidence is perishable, what do you mean by that?
Well, biological materials, for example, blood, in a hostile environment such as a crime scene, the ground is not in its normal environment, can go bad.
What is the importance of having the coroner called to a crime scene as soon as possible?
My experience with having the coroner come to the crime scene as soon as possible is that they are trained in establishing or estimating the time of death.
Is it important that all of those agencies begin working together at the very earliest moment?
In my opinion, it is, yes.
Are you aware of any legitimate investigative or forensic reason to not begin processing the Bundy crime scene until 10 hours after the bodies were discovered? Approximately.
No foundation.
Overruled on that basis. Go ahead. Answer those.
There's no reason that I know of.
Do you have an opinion on the appropriateness of only, with the complicated crime scenes present in this case, of only having one team of criminalists working all crime scenes?
Do I have an opinion?
Yes.
I would say it would be inappropriate.
What would be the appropriate procedure?
The appropriate procedure would be to call at least a second team of criminalists.
Are you familiar with the equipment that Andrea Mazzola and Dennis Fung had available to them in their crime scene truck for examining for latent shoe print evidence at the crime scene?
Vague.
Sustained.
Are you aware of whether or not there was ever any search done in the dirt area of the Bundy crime scene for latent shoe prints?
No foundation of personal knowledge.
In the reports that I was given, I found no evidence that that was done.
And do you know whether or not the Los Angeles Police Department in their crime scene trucks has equipment to conduct such
No,
an analysis?
Josh. No.
Not relevant, calls for
Josh,
speculation,
no.
foundation.
You can't have breakfast tacos with this going on. You have to eat saltines and water. That's the only real food that pairs with the environment of this trial right now. Saltine crackers, unsalted saltine crackers, and water. Warm, no ice cubes.
Well, actually, there isn't any special equipment needed to look for shoe impressions in soil other than a flashlight at night.
Is there, in your opinion, is there any legitimate investigative or forensic reason not to do that at a crime scene such as Bundy?
Your Honor, it's improper. It's contrary to the evidence.
Remember the question?
Yes.
Is there any reason not to look for footprints?
No.
Next question.
Mr. Regal, what techniques are available to look for shoe prints in dirt at night? What's the role of oblique lighting in examining shoe prints?
Not relevant.
Oblique lighting is light at an angle and light at a sharp angle, so any indentations in whatever it is, whether it's soil or indented writing or anything like that on a piece of paper, the shadowing accentuates fine detail, so it allows a person to see something that could be very subtle or something quite obvious.
Now, I have two photographs that I think are actually already in one form. These are just blow-ups that I'd like to have marked.
Mrs. Robinson, this would be 1326 and 1327. Excuse me, 1327, 1328. All right. First one will be 1327, Mr. Blazer. No. We'll never get out of here.
Judge, we are never going to get out of here, ever. Do you hear these questions?
Mr. Regal, are there any advantages to looking for shoe prints in dirt at night versus in the day?
Yes.
What are those advantages?
The oblique light, which would be holding a flashlight at a very sharp angle in the dark, allows you to accentuate any fine detail much greater than if you had ordinary daylight radiating down from various angles and reflecting off other surfaces.
Is that also true for shoe impressions or residues on hard surfaces as well as dirt?
Not necessarily with oblique lighting, but with other types of lighting it might be.
Let me show you what's been marked as Defense 1327. Mr. Harris, I think we can do this up here.
Bobby, I would believe that. Like, I would have no issues believing that.
All right.
Here's why.
Can you see that?
Here's why. Here's why I would believe it. Because technology and science and everything, you know, in the 90s, DNA and everything, it was all new, but it was growing, and we were learning more and more and more so quickly. So I could just see them coming into court. Well, 3 months ago, you were on the stand, and you said this about DNA, but look, this new report came out. Okay, we need to take a day or two to redo the evidence in this new way that we just, came out, and that continually happening for years and years and years and years and years. Hi, Jude.
Thank you.
Lovely Jude.
I can put up 1328 at the same time.
All right. Mr. Blazer.
Mr. Regal, can you see the two photographs we put up?
Not very well.
Okay, you can step down and take a look at it if you like. You've seen those photographs before, have you not?
Yes, I have.
And what is 1327 a picture of?
All right, Mr. Ray, would you address the jury when you're giving your answers, please?
I don't know which one is 13.
The one on the left.
Okay. This is a photograph of the glove and part of the pavement that was a sidewalk at Bundy. And this is apparently the hat and someone pointing their finger at this particular item.
Now, we've had testimony indicating that's Detective Furman pointing at a glove. Is there, in your opinion, any legitimate investigative reason for having a picture with a detective pointing at a piece of evidence?
No.
What is the standard procedure with respect to photographing items of evidence, with respect to having people in the photographs?
It's generally avoided.
And why is that?
Partly tradition and partly it obliterates other parts of this photograph.
Well,
Does having another person walking around the crime scene cause any potential problems as well?
Certainly unnecessary.
Now, 1328 is a picture, a later picture of the glove with an evidence tag on it. You've seen that one before?
Yes, I have.
Objection, that misstates testimony. There's no tag on it.
or sustained. Rephrase the question.
With a number card that says 102
Next to it.
next to it.
All right, that's a photographer's ID number, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Now, did I ask you to compare those two pictures to determine whether there had been any alteration of that particular area of the crime scene between the first picture and the second picture?
Your Honor, this is cumulative. We've gone into this at length.
We have previously. I'm not saying I'm going to...
Now, I would open a place called Side Chick, but not Sidebar.
Mr. Regal, is it important in the process of protecting a crime scene that evidence not be altered or moved or picked up or replaced prior to the time of its collection and processing?
Yes, it is.
Why is that important?
For the reasons I expressed before, the integrity of the evidence is then in question. The potential of adding or subtracting something from the evidence can occur.
You can resume your chair, please. I'm wondering if we might display these to the jurors. I'm not sure they can all see them.
1386, can you see those? If you want, Mr. Blazer, you can bring them up and just display them briefly at the front of the center of the jury box. However, these photographs have been displayed before. So this is to allow the jurors to recollect and refresh their recollections as to these two items. All right, thank you, counsel. You got the shift?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our break for the lunch hour at this time. Mr. Regal, so you can step down. You're ordered to come back at 1 o'clock. We'll stand at recess until 1 o'clock. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you, or allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. We'll stand in recess until 1 o'clock. And Mr. Goldberg, Mr. Scheck, confer with each other on those other two issues. All right, thank you. Back on the record in the Simpson matter, all parties are again present. Counsel, anything we need to discuss before we invite the jurors to join us?
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly.
Always scare me when you say very briefly.
This will be brief. I would ask the court for a little bit of latitude with Mr. Regal. I know that some of these materials have been covered before. However, it's all been through our cross-examination of prosecution witnesses. Mr. Regal is the first person we put on as our witness on crime scene
And I
processing.
understand that.
The other point is, I intend to ask him questions regarding the movement of evidence, the envelope and the glove prior to collection. And I wasn't here on Thursday or Friday, but I understand that there was a bench conference where the court stated that it was the court's impression that there had been testimony explaining how those items got moved. We do not recall any such testimony. I want to make sure that we're clear on what is in the record before I pursue that avenue. We have not found any reference anywhere to any witness explaining how those items got moved. That's our current understanding.
Well, that's not my recollection. My recollection is that we've heard testimony from the investigating officers, Lang and Van Adder, that there were certain items in place, that bodies were moved, and then that they were replaced and photo cards placed.
We don't recall any such testimony.
Yep, yep.
They've acknowledged, obviously, from the photographs that the items
Right.
were moved in some fashion, but I don't recall any testimony where they said, yeah, I did it, or he did it, and this was just to put things
No, I
down.
recollect an explanation for that, but that's not to say that you can't have your experts say that's not a good idea no matter how it happened,
Okay.
for obvious reasons. But I just might add that the jury, I think, can figure that out. You don't think so, Mr. Scheck? No, that's a rhetorical question. Let's have the jurors.
When we get time, we should have a discussion about what the record states and doesn't.
Well, I have a pretty clear recollection that that's already occurred. All right, let's have the jurors, please. I don't know. I'll have to ask Mr. Blazier. He's the one seated. Mr. Regal, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, good afternoon, Mr. Regal. Record to reflect Larry Razzle is on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Blazier. Mr. Regal, sir, you reminded you were still under oath. Mr. Blazier, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Regal, I wanted to ask you just a couple more questions about latent or faint shoe prints or other impressions that might be left at a crime scene. Did I understand your testimony before lunch to be that the nighttime is a much better time to locate such prints, if they exist, than the daytime?
Overruled.
If we're talking about a nighttime outdoor location, yes.
And what equipment is available if a latent or faint shoe print was visible or was identified that way? Are there procedures available to make a record of that and preserve those prints?
I don't understand what you
There are lifting
mean.
devices that are available,
Bobby.
static electrical.
Romantic dinner with spouse? Why would you go on a dinner with your spouse? If you want to have a romantic dinner, we're back to the whole side chick thing again.
Dust lifting devices, and there's ordinary rubber lifting devices that are available.
And do those techniques allow you to preserve such prints so that they can be analyzed later or examined by any parties later?
Yes, they do.
Are you aware of whether or not the Los Angeles Police Department SID division has such equipment available to it?
It's listed in their procedurals handbook, their they call it their crime scene policies and procedural handbook, or field scene, something like that.
Sustained. Answer stricken. Jurors to disregard.
Is
Question was, do you know if they have the equipment, not what their manual says?
Do you know if they have such equipment?
No.
Is that equipment that's readily available to law enforcement agencies everywhere?
Yes.
And I'd like to show Mr. Regal Defense 1071.
Which page, counsel?
Well, I'm going to show him the manual initially.
Right.
Show you 1071. Does that appear to be the field manual that you were just referring to?
There's no foundation that you can authenticate that.
Overruled.
This is the document that I was referring to.
Is it important, in your view, for a crime lab to have a manual in place that sets forth procedures to be used by criminalists in processing crime scenes?
Yes.
And there's been testimony that that manual has never been actually adopted, that it's existed for several years and has never gotten past the first draft stage. In your opinion, is that acceptable procedure with respect to having your methods documented?
Oh, you can answer the question.
The question is it acceptable to not have these methods
Yes.
you adopted?
Not have any methods set forth in a manual that guides everybody on collecting evidence the same way.
I don't understand the question.
Okay. Have you reviewed that field manual, portions of it that relate to evidence collection?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
And do you have an opinion on whether certain parts of that manual state procedures, correct procedures that should be used in processing evidence?
Yes, they do.
Let me ask you one question about death notification. What is the standard practice with respect to death notifications in homicide cases?
Same objections previously made.
Sustain.
Do many of the suggestions or comments that
Siobhan!
you've made about inadequacies of the
Siobhan!
Los Angeles Police Department relate to the prevention or the detection of evidence tampering?
Misstates the testimony. You didn't talk about any inadequacies.
Sustain.
You recall when we talked about the 5 categories of processing a crime scene and what the general framework is, what your goals are in processing crime scenes?
Yes.
And how does that relate to prevention or detection of evidence tampering?
The step that I described as documentation, all of that, all the efforts within that particular step are intended to maintain the integrity of the evidence, the identity of the evidence, and to establish that only authorized individuals who either collected the evidence or in any way opened the evidence or worked with the evidence are recorded.
Hi, Nina.
Are you familiar with tamper-resistant seals for evidence items?
Yes?
Now, have you followed the testimony with respect to the drawing of Mr. Simpson's reference blood and the procedure that was used to preserve that and transport it?
Yes, I am.
Now, let me show you Table Exhibit 163H. That is a sample envelope that corresponds to the envelope used to contain Mr. Simpson's reference sample. Is that what that appears to be to you?
Yes.
Now, the procedures set forth on that envelope indicate that it should be sealed once the evidence...
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
What is the proper procedure with respect to sealing evidence at the time that it is collected, in your view?
With this specific item or any item?
Well, let's take that item as an example.
Any time a sample is placed in a container like this.
Oh, you don't
and
get
then
to think
transferred
about
from-
me every time someone loses their keys and has a Mazda. Because I don't lose my keys. I don't. Almost every single car I've ever owned only had one set of keys. And I don't know if I've ever actually got someone that had to make a set of keys for my cars. That one day, the cat just tapped my keys behind the desk, or whatever you call that thing in front of my door. And I lost my keys for a couple hours. But that was one time. One time.
One person to the other, the evidence
I
should be
found
sealed
them.
by the person who is the originator of the evidence,
And what's the reason for having it sealed at that early stage?
so that its identity and integrity is without any question.
In your opinion, is it acceptable to place a reference blood vial in that envelope and
What you can do is send me a meme for how many days it goes without me losing my keys. It will be a lot of days.
have it remain unsealed for several days?
Your Honor, call for speculation, no foundation.
You can answer the question.
In my opinion, that's not a good practice.
What is your opinion as to the proper technique that should be used in terms of marking evidence as it's collected?
Isn't that kind of vague, because we have such a wide range of different types, some of which can't actually be marked itself?
All right, let's take as an example the swatches that were made from blood stains. And I'm going to ask you specifically about the procedure that should be used to identify those or mark them. In your opinion, what is the appropriate procedure to use once that item is collected?
Since swatches cannot be actually written on, they should be documented by counting them, by placing them in some sort of container where they will be dried, if they're not already dry. Ideally, they would be either photographed or sketched, and then they would be placed in a package and sealed. And in this case, since it's available, sealed with some sort of tape such as this tape.
And again, what is the reason for that?
I don't think we need to ask questions again.
I'm sorry?
We don't need to ask questions again.
Does the LAPD field manual that is not actually in effect provide a procedure for fully documenting the collection of evidence?
Oh,
No authentication, that's not an issue.
oh,
I believe it does, yes.
Now, with respect to removing dried blood stain from various surfaces, do you have an opinion on the proper way that that should be done?
Yes.
And what is that opinion? I mean, how should that be done properly?
Well, the best way to remove a sample of blood from any dry surface that's not movable, the best way if it's on a movable surface is to move the surface directly to the laboratory by the process we've already discussed, the documentation, packaging, and preservation. But if it's on something that cannot be moved, the first attempt should be to at least evaluate whether or not some of it can be scraped off of the surface with a probe or with a scalpel blade or something like that, so that the blood is left in as close to the same condition it was at the crime scene. If that's not possible, or if only part of the sample can be removed that way, then the next step is to dampen something, either a swatch, that's the technique that's used in Los Angeles, or at least liked by the Los Angeles Police Department, or a cotton swab, similar to a Q-tip. And to dampen that and then to apply that to the remaining stain or whatever is left of the stain until all of that is transferred onto the cotton.
Now, there's been testimony in this case that wet blood swatches were stored in plastic bags. In your opinion, is that an acceptable technique to use to preserve blood swatches?
That's not a proper technique.
Why not?
It's a very hostile environment for any biological material to be placed into, first of all, any plastic bag, particularly when it's wet.
Now, what is the proper procedure in terms of whether blood swatches should be dried right at the scene or dried later?
It's my opinion they should be dried at the scene.
Now, again, with respect to documenting such things as bindles or containers with blood swatches in them, is it important, in your view, that they be initialed by the person who actually does the collection? That contained the wet swatches were transported back to the Los Angeles Police Department and then discarded. Do you have an opinion on whether that was an appropriate procedure to follow in the collection and processing of bloodstains?
Yes, I have an opinion.
And what's your opinion?
That anything that contained the evidence, such as this plastic bag, should be retained.
And why is that?
To answer any question that comes up later, was there anything in the plastic bag that could have interfered with any subsequent test? Was the bag itself something that could interfere with any subsequent test? Was there any residue of the sample, since it's placed in there wet, that could be of some value for further testing?
Is preserving packaging material important if there's some question down the road about whether evidence has been switched or altered in some fashion?
I just stepped away for just a second. Should I rewind it? Did I miss finally a good question? By any chance? Question mark?
Yes.
And if there is blood residue left on the inside of the plastic bags, can that be useful in testing whether or not a later sample actually came from that bag or not?
Yes.
You're familiar with the term a photo log, are you not?
Yes, I am.
And what's the purpose of a photo log?
A photo log is like a diary. It's a sequential list of photographs that are taken in any particular event involving an investigation.
And do you have an understanding as to whether or not a complete photo log was kept by Los Angeles Police Department that documents the order in which pictures were taken at the Bundy or Rockingham scenes?
No foundation, no personal knowledge, not
Sustained.
Do you have any knowledge of whether or not a photo log was maintained for photographs that were taken at Bundy and Rockingham?
Oh, that's exactly
some
right,
information.
Josh.
And do you have an opinion on whether or not appropriate documentation with respect to a photo log was kept of photographs taken at the Bundy and Rockingham scenes?
Foundation.
From-
Sustained.
From your knowledge of what was done with respect to creating a photo log, do you have an opinion on whether that was done adequately by the Los Angeles Police Department?
Sustained.
Did you attempt to locate a photo log from the Los Angeles Police Department showing the order in which photographs were taken at Rockingham and Bundy?
Yes.
Have you ever seen such a log?
No.
Is such a log important?
Yes.
In your opinion, is it an acceptable procedure to process a crime scene such as Bundy and Rockingham without keeping a photo log?
Is it an appropriate practice to keep a photo log?
Yes, it is.
Specifically with respect to evidence items such as the socks that were found
Hi,
at
Kelly.
Mr. Simpson's residence in this case. Do you believe that it's important that a complete documentation be maintained as to when photographs were taken in what sequence of an evidence item such as that?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the use of videotaping or video cameras in the processing of crime scenes?
Yes, I am.
How is a video camera useful in processing a crime scene?
The
Foundation.
Are you familiar with techniques that are used to document crime scenes through the use of videotaping?
yes.
And what are those techniques?
The technique of walking through a crime scene and viewing the scene through the camcorder.
Now, does that serve some purpose with respect to briefing other officers on what is at a crime scene?
That's exactly what I recommend in my teaching of crime scene investigators, is to use this camcorder, particularly the kind that has a viewing screen on it, for a quick review for people who arrive at the crime scene who want to know or who need to know what the crime scene looks like.
Back in the 90s, you couldn't take videos with camcorders because the tapes that you need were all different sizes, so you never had the size that you needed. And then the battery kept going out. So you never had battery. And then you always left the camera lens covered. So you recorded for an hour with nothing. And then that little thing that pops out so you can see the LED screen, that never worked. So, no, you could hold it, but the memory card inside was always not there. So, it was gone as soon as you took it. It was a mess. It was very traumatic.
Rather than having them walk through the scene again and in adding any other possible changes to the scene, to view the scene on a camcorder.
Now, what's the disadvantage of not having a videotape to show other officers?
Well, if they genuinely have a need to know, they have to go into the crime scene and walk through it.
Why isn't just taking still photographs acceptable by itself?
Sustained leading.
Well, can the same purpose be achieved by taking still photographs at a crime scene?
To some extent, Polaroid photographs taken at a crime scene because they're developed almost instantly. But regular photography requires, even if there's an all-night, 1-hour service, at least an hour.
Now, do you know whether or not the Los Angeles Police Department has videotaping equipment available to it?
Yes.
Now, we've had testimony that the only scene videotape that was taken was for insurance purposes at Rockingham after a search was conducted. In your opinion, is that a proper use of the videotaping equipment that they had available to them?
Yes.
Sustain. Foundation.
In your opinion, is it acceptable or unacceptable if a police agency has videotaping equipment available to them to not take any videotapes of a crime scene?
Sustain.
There's been testimony that Detective Furman used the interior of Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium as a sort of command post after he arrived at the scene. Do you have an opinion on whether or not that was an appropriate use of the inside of Nicole Brown Simpson's
Sustained.
condominium?
Sustain. Misstates the evidence.
There's been testimony that the inside of the condominium was used by police officers to either sit down and make notes or conduct briefings of other police officers. Do you have an opinion on whether or not that is appropriate?
It's compound. It's compound.
What's your understanding of the use to which the inside of Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium was used by the Los Angeles Police Department at the time that they arrived at the crime scene?
Also hearsay, irrelevant, no personal knowledge.
I heard the testimony of some of the investigating officers
And that was as to what?
to going inside the condo.
Now, is that an acceptable procedure in your mind?
Sustain.
Do you see any problem?
Counsel, just focus in on the particular witness that sat on the couch and made notes. Focus in on the particular witness who used the telephone. Focus in on the particular witness who used the lights. These are very vague questions, unless you want to narrow it down to the evidence in this case.
With respect to Detective Mark Furman using the inside of the condominium to sit down and write his notes, do you have an opinion on whether or not that was appropriate?
Overruled.
It is inappropriate to do that unless that area had been processed for evidence
And-
before that time.
Why is it important that the inside of Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium be processed in any fashion?
Because it is adjacent to, and at least in my opinion, part of the overall scene.
Now, you're aware of, I believe it was Officer Risky's testimony that he used a telephone inside of Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium to, I believe, contact other police officers. You call that testimony?
Yes, I do.
And do you have an opinion on whether or not that was an appropriate action to take on his part?
Overruled.
I have an opinion, yes,
And what's your opinion?
that was inappropriate to use the phone inside the victim's house at that time.
And why is that?
The most obvious reason would be if somebody else had used that phone that is involved in the situation, there could have been fingerprints on that phone. The other reasons are because of technology today and redialing. And again, not of my own knowledge, but testimony I heard that there's other mechanisms on that phone that would indicate the last incoming call. That
All right, that as to the technology regarding last incoming phone number, that'll be stricken. Not supported by the evidence.
Well, is there any, do you have an understanding of whether that telephone was able to store the last number that was used to call out?
Your Honor, there's no personal knowledge, no foundation for this.
Overall, overruled, but we talked about last number redial is what we talked about.
Yes.
And he's already answered that question.
Okay. What's your understanding as to the timing as to when the coroner's office removed the victim's bodies with respect to that crime scene being actually processed?
that the bodies were moved at approximately 10:15.
And was that before or after that crime scene was processed?
This would have been before criminalist Fung and Mazzola did at least most of their processing.
Have you reviewed the testimony of Detective Lang with respect to his reasons why the bodies were removed prior to the time that the crime scene was processed?
Yes, I have.
You recall him using a term, close-in crime scene.
Yes.
I'd like to read from page 17,638 and ask the witness his opinion of this explanation, if I might.
Want to give counsel this site?
17,638. Mr. Regal, I want to read to you the testimony from Detective Lang with respect to why the scene was processed in that manner and ask your opinion about this. Bundy was a close-in crime scene. The victims were close to one another. The evidence was close to the victims. A determination was made, as one example, to remove the victims prior to the evidence because of this. If the evidence had been several feet away or out in the street or something else, perhaps the victims would have stayed at that location while the evidence was collected. You just have to deal with what you have. Do you have an opinion on whether that is an acceptable explanation for why the bodies were removed prior to the time that the crime scene was processed?
I think it's too acceptable, no foundation.
Foundation for the opinion. Examination of the crime scene photos, appreciation for the proximities. You need a foundation for that.
In forming an opinion that you have you considered the crime scene photographs that you've reviewed, as well as testimony about the order in which things were done and the proximity of various pieces of evidence to the body?
Yes, I have.
And do you have an opinion based on that as to whether Detective Lang's explanation for why that was done is acceptable or not?
I have an opinion.
And what's your opinion?
Oh, well,
It is my opinion that that is not an acceptable explanation.
Why not?
It is 180 degrees in opposition of how a close-in crime scene should be processed. The evidence that is nearest the body, you have to start from the outside and work your way in. And you can't move, you could move the victim, and you should move the victim, obviously, if the victim's alive. I mean, you have to endanger the evidence to save the person's life, and that happens a lot. If there is no chance of that, then it's a slow, methodical approach to the victims, and it's the last thing you would do would be to move the victims. And you should never move the victims over the evidence or have to move the evidence in order to move deceased individuals.
Now, have you examined photographs of the various pieces of evidence in this case and determined that some items of evidence were moved from the taking of one picture till some later picture, specifically the envelope and the glove?
Yes.
What is the importance, in your view, of determining how that kind of movement of evidence took place?
The appropriateness, did you say?
What is the importance, or is there any importance to trying to determine how evidence got moved prior to the time it was collected?
Yes, there is some importance to that.
And what's that importance?
The importance is, I'm looking over here, I thought the photos were still there, is that the...
Would you like to refer to those?
I don't think I need them. It's just that any evidence that is in the path of the movement of the deceased and the people, to lift an adult, it requires at least two people. So there has to be an intrusion into the very heart of the crime scene here. And obviously anything that is in the way can get moved, or it can get stepped on, or it can get altered.
Now, with respect to trace evidence, such as dirt or other trace evidence that might be on an item of evidence, such as the envelope, what's the proper procedure to use to preserve that type of evidence?
You're talking about loose material, or?
Any trace material that might be apparent on an item that's on the ground.
I believe the appropriate material to remove any evidence that is fragile is to do it at the crime scene, to inspect the evidence, to determine if there's something that would be lost if you attempt to pick it up and put it in a container, and if that's the decision of the criminalist, to collect it there rather than take the chance of losing it.
Now, you talked a little earlier about the proper photographic documentation for items of evidence. Let's talk specifically about blood drops. Have you reviewed the photographs that have been made available to you of the what's been called the Bundy blood drops?
Yes, I have.
And do you have an opinion on whether or not that photographic documentation that you have seen is adequate?
It is not.
And why is it not
Excuse
adequate?
me. Yes, I have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
That is not.
Why is it not adequate?
There are a couple of reasons. Every photograph of something like that that's close up, I think I mentioned this earlier, should have a ruler, and in the case of something like blood drops, should have a indication of the direction, compass, not the direction necessarily of the movement of the blood, but of north, or some reference point, so that a viewer later on can see this. The ruler can tell them the size, and obviously there has to be some other indicator or marker, a number, an item number, or something like that, and in a direction of north.
Here, I have a photograph to mark. It's next in order.
This would be 1329. 1329.
All right, may I put this on the Elmo? Let me show you what's been marked as Defense 1329. That's a picture of one of the Bundy drops that's been referred to, is it not?
Yes.
And can you use this picture as an example of how that was improperly documented, at least through this picture?
Only one of the items that I suggested a moment ago shows up in this photograph, and that is there is a tag indicating a photo number. That's appropriate. What's inappropriate about that tag, by the way, is the placement of it. It is too close and is obliterating, or at least, I shouldn't say obliterating, it is masking the area underneath the piece of paper. It's like a 3x5 card or something like that. And that's too close. There should be, it could be this close if another photograph is taken without anything in it. But what is missing here entirely is a ruler and a pointer or a notation that north is, you know, to the top or to the bottom or to the side, whatever the photograph is, however it was oriented.
Mr. Regal, is it important to, when processing a crime scene, to preserve blood spatter evidence that might be on items in the immediate vicinity of the crime scene?
Yes, it is.
And are you familiar with blood spatter that appears on the gated area in the surrounding the area where Mr. Goldman's body was found?
I've seen the photographs that were supplied to me, yes.
And what's the importance of adequately preserving that kind of evidence?
Eventually, a scene like this, there would be some attempt to interpret what happened, to reconstruct the events. And all that cast-off blood or spattered blood or whatever the reason that blood appeared there could be used to determine what happened.
And from the material that you reviewed, do you have an opinion on whether that aspect of the crime scene was adequately documented?
Sustained.
What materials have you reviewed with respect to that area of the crime scene?
A series of photographs that were supplied to me.
And from the photographs that were supplied to you, assuming hypothetically that those were the only photographs to preserve that evidence, do you feel that the photographs that you were provided adequately document the blood spatter on that area of the crime scene?
I think we're vague because we don't really know what we're talking about here, which photographs we're talking about.
Well, the photographs that you reviewed were what? What did they show?
I know what you're talking about because I have been listening
Referring
intently to every word.
To the gate
I have
and
not
to the
drifted off
railing?
into
The metal fence that
other
surrounded
things at all.
the area where Mr.
Nope,
Goldman's body was found.
not once.
There was an assortment of photographs that showed various blood, what would be called blood spatter or splatter.
Now, if that is adequately documented through photographs and measurements and any other means available, is it possible to attempt to reconstruct what might have happened in that area, at least partially, that accounted for that blood? No.
Well, that would be the purpose of taking the photographs.
We have had testimony that a criminalist Fung, at the direction of Detective Lang, removed the glove in the bag that had been found at the Rockingham area and took it into the Bundy crime scene, climbing over Mr. Goldman's body, I believe, to show it to Detective Lang.
Sustain. Restate the question.
Are you familiar with the testimony that Dennis Fung took the Rockingham glove inside of a bag into the Bundy crime scene to show it to Detective Lang?
Yes, I am.
Do you have an opinion on whether or not that is an appropriate technique to use?
That vague is too appropriate and foundational, so it wasn't effective.
Overwood.
I have an opinion.
And what's your opinion?
My opinion that nothing should be taken back into the crime scene from one crime scene to the other.
Why is that?
It's just a bad practice. There's a chance that something can go wrong and contamination could occur.
Have you reviewed the testimony with respect to Mr. Simpson's reference blood, specifically that it was taken by Detective Van Adder back to Rockingham?
I'm familiar with that.
And do you have an opinion on whether or not that was appropriate for Detective Van Adder to do?
I have an opinion.
Overwood.
What's your opinion?
The same exact situation. I don't believe that any evidence should be taken from one location back into another location unless there's some, extremely important reason. And I can't imagine any reason would be that important.
Have you reviewed Detective Lang's testimony with respect to why the hands of the victims were not bagged separately prior to the time that the coroner moved the bodies?
Yes.
And what's your understanding of his reason for that?
Sustained.
Do you have an opinion on whether or not it is acceptable in moving bodies from a crime scene that the entire body be contained in plastic as opposed to the hands being individually bagged?
Your Honor, it's beyond the scope of his expertise.
Overwood.
If I understand your question properly, it isn't appropriate to not bag the hands.
And why is that?
In any type of crime where there's potential contact between two people, there is the possibility of trace evidence underneath the fingernails or on the hands. And once the remains have been placed in a body bag, the chances of that evidence being contaminated by some of the victim's own blood, which is going to be loose in that bag, is obvious.
And what is the appropriate procedure for when bodies are transported in a sheet or a body bag with respect to preserving the container that was used to carry the bodies?
I recommend that container be retained
Why is that?
because key pieces of evidence, significant material, can fall off of the remains, off the clothing, and if it's in the bottom of a body bag and that body bag is disposed of, so is the evidence.
Did you review the testimony of, I believe it was Mr. Fung, who testified that Mr. Simpson's reference blood was placed in a garbage bag at Rockingham to be transported back to SID?
Did I hear that? Yes.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Did you review the testimony of Dennis Fung that he placed, or that the reference blood of Mr. Simpson was placed in a garbage bag at Rockingham to be transported to SID?
Incomplete. It's also leaving, Your Honor.
Sustained. No, it's an appropriate way to pose the question. Reference sample inside the gray envelope, inside the garbage bag.
The reference blood inside the unsealed gray envelope inside the trash bag. Have you reviewed that testimony?
Have I reviewed the testimony?
Yes.
I watched the testimony.
And also, did you watch the testimony that Mr. Fung testifying that Andrea Mazzola, who was carrying that garbage bag, was never informed, or was not informed when she was transporting as to what was in it?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion on whether or not that was an acceptable procedure?
Overwood. You can answer the question.
There are 2 to 3 different levels here. First of all, the bag itself is not in and of itself anything inherently wrong with that, as long as it's a fresh bag. The container, this container, I'm holding up this analyzed evidence container that is
160.
used for blood vials, should have been sealed. And
163H.
And it's inappropriate, it may not be the right word, but it's a big chance of giving something like that to somebody to carry and not informing them what's inside of it because of the fragile nature of a glass vial.
Are you familiar with testimony to the effect that the envelope with the prescription glasses contained within them, that at some point after that item was collected by the Los Angeles Police Department, one of the lenses disappeared?
Sustain.
Are you familiar with testimony to the effect that originally there were 2 lenses in the glasses that were in the envelope that was retrieved from the Bundy crime scene, and now there's only 1 lens?
Sustain.
If it came to your attention that there was a piece of evidence that had been collected in one form and part of that evidence had disappeared at some later time, what is the appropriate response of the investigating agency?
Overrule. Overrule.
It would be in my opinion that they should make an attempt to find out why some of the evidence is missing.
You and I discussed the other day the concept of a team approach to processing of crime scenes. Recall that?
Overrule. It's foundational.
Yes, we did.
And does that tie into what you were talking about earlier, having the coroner and the criminalists and the detectives working together?
Yes.
Why is that important?
In a death investigation, it's important to have the 3 different disciplines involved in the investigation because of their varying levels of expertise. The detective or the police investigator has a particular function. The deputy coroner is what I would consider a scientific investigator, has a specific function that complements the investigator's knowledge, and the criminalist's job is to come to the crime scene with a knowledge of crime scene reconstruction, a knowledge of the types of evidence that they can look for at different types of crimes, and how to collect and maintain that evidence in as close as possible its original condition. And then there is another person in this team, and I don't think you mentioned them.
And who's that?
The field evidence technician, or what some people call the identification investigator.
Do you, incidentally, do you have an opinion as to whether Dennis Fung and Andrea Mazzola, given the manner in which they processed these 2 crime scenes, whether they were practicing criminalistics, if you will?
Overrule.
It's my opinion that they were not practicing criminalistics as it should be done at a crime scene.
And how are you using that term, criminalistics?
As a forensic science investigator that is trained and is knowledgeable of the types of evidence, how they should be collected and preserved.
You have a minute, Your Honor.
We haven't had a nice, healthy sidebar in a while. It's been almost 10 minutes.
Mr. Regal, assume hypothetically that items of evidence such as the envelope and the glove had been moved in some fashion. Whose responsibility would it be to determine who moved it, how it was moved, and why it was moved?
Calls for speculation. Let's just stimulate what
Overrule.
Overrule.
The responsibility to determine that depends on the timing when it's noted. If the crime scene criminalist comes to the scene and sees something in one location, and a little bit later he sees it in another location, it's his responsibility, or her responsibility, right then to try to find out why or who moved this. If it's discovered through some other method, later on through photography, then it is a departmental issue, and it would be either the chief criminalist or the director's responsibility to find out, who is moving things unauthorized, and I'm assuming this is unauthorized movement, at the crime scene. And or possibly the departments, if they have that type of follow-up investigation somewhere else in the department.
Mr. Regal, have you examined Mr. Simpson's Bronco in this case?
Yes.
And I'd like to put up People's 197K. Have you specifically examined the area of the door sill, the bottom area of the doors, the front doors of the car, the area that's below the bottom of the door?
Yes, I have.
Now let me show you. I want you to assume hypothetically that Detective Furman testified that he observed what appeared to be some blood marks in the bottom area of the door. And I want you to assume further that criminalist Fung examined the door sill area in an attempt to identify those marks and circled the 3 areas that you see on that photograph. Do you have that in mind?
Misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
Furman's testimony.
Sustained.
I want you to assume hypothetically that Detective Furman testified that he observed 4 brush-like marks that appeared to be bloodstains on the door sill area of the Bronco.
Misstates the testimony.
You see counsel at the sidebar with court, please.
I thank you. That's exactly what I asked for. A nice little sidebar where they can all chat. Without us. Like we're not even here. Like they don't know anything about us. Us. Delay of game, 15-yard penalty. Automatic first down.
Mr. Blazer.
Thank you, Mr. Regal, with respect to the,
There's Kardashian working hard back there. Look at him.
on the photograph up on the screen.
Good job,
the
sir.
circled area on the right and the 2 spots that appear to be circled, the top circle in the diagram. You have those in mind?
Yes.
Based on your observations of the Bronco, the times that you've looked at it, can you see those 2 circled areas if the door is closed?
Your Honor, no foundation that the door was on it when he inspected it.
Let me comment about this photograph first, if I may, because I can't.
Nope, you have to answer the question.
Okay.
Well, can you tell from that photograph, can you get oriented with that photograph?
I can get oriented with this photograph, yes.
Okay.
And in my opinion, you could not see 2 of these locations if the door was shut.
And which 2?
The one furthest, it's coming off the screen now, the furthest to the right, and then of the 2 on the left, the upper one.
For the record, we should have those 2, an arrow put on those 2 and print it out. And number this exhibit our next in order.
All right, this will be 1330.
Mr. Regal, do you have an opinion on whether the bottom left circle would be visible with the door closed?
I believe it would, yes.
All right, record reflect that arrows have been placed on the two circles which Mr. Regal has testified are areas which could not be seen with the door closed. That'll be marked as Defense Exhibit 1330.
Let me just clarify my earlier question. With respect to not the circles themselves, but the markings inside the circle on the two that have the arrow on them, to your opinion, that the spots inside those circles would not be visible unless the door was open?
Yes.
That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Goldberg?
Maybe just leave that up there for a second, just so we don't have to
Sure.
waste time.
Good place to start.
Mr. Regal, may I start, Your Honor? Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Regal, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of this photograph, can you see the initials DF for Dennis Fung? There's a little bit of a glare. Maybe we can move it over a little bit.
I see those initials, yes.
Okay. And was it your understanding of the testimony that this particular photograph was testified to by Dennis Fung, not by Mark Furman?
This photograph?
Yes.
As far as these markings, yes.
Yes. And was it your understanding of the testimony that Mark Furman's testimony was that he saw bloodstains on the lower portion of the driver's door
Kelly,
as opposed to the
love.
sill?
He was joking.
His objection was sustained.
Okay. Now, when was it that you last saw the Bronco in this case, sir?
March 14th, I believe, of 1995.
And is that when you made the examination that was the subject of the most recent line of inquiry by the defense regarding the Bronco?
No.
Have you seen it since then?
No, I had seen it before also. But that, in terms of looking specifically for the shape of this area of the door and the what would be the enclosed area if the door is shut, that's correct. The door was not on it at the time that I looked at it, but the other side door was.
Okay, so at the time that you looked at the side that's depicted in this particular photograph, is it correct to say that the door had already been removed?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're forming your opinion as to what could or could not be seen based upon your examination on the 14th of March without the benefit of having the driver's door in place. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I don't know if this is beyond the scope of your expertise. Please let us know. But is it your understanding from owning cars and observing cars and being a criminalist, presumably doing investigations involving cars, that sometimes the alignment is different on one door as opposed to the other?
That is indeed possible.
Now, Mr. Regal, you've been critical of some of the procedures that have been used in this case to do the crime scene investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, I am critical.
We can take the photograph down. Thank you. And with respect to the Bronco, if blood had been observed on the lower portion of the driver's door of the Bronco, and someone had thought that that was significant from a forensic science standpoint, if you had been out on the at the crime scene as a criminalist, would you have wanted to remove that evidence at the scene as opposed to removing it at some later point?
Yes,
And what would the reason for that be?
because of the fact that you have to transport a car under those circumstances, and unless you have an enclosed carrier, something could happen to that sample.
In other words, just very simply, in the 14 or 15-mile drive or however long it is back to the print shed from the scene at Rockingham, there would be a great likelihood of perhaps that evidence towards the bottom of the door becoming washed off or somehow obliterated. Is that correct?
Could be very possible.
Okay.
If it's, you know, they drive through water or something like that.
Right. And we'd be very concerned that we might not be able to find that later on. Is that correct?
That's a possibility.
Now, sir, based upon your extensive experience as a criminalist and also training police officers, is it your understanding that police officers have often submitted items for analysis at the laboratory that they believe to be blood that turned out not to be blood?
Yes. Or not to be human blood or something like that.
And would you agree that when you're looking at a tiny little dot of a reddish, brownish spot, for the police officer who is not trained in criminalistics, it may be difficult to tell for sure whether you're really looking at something that's blood as opposed to something that's just a little dot of mud or some other material. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So would you be surprised if a police officer were to look at a Bronco door and perhaps mistake something for blood that was not blood?
That could happen.
And it was your opinion that at least one of the dots of blood that we saw in the photograph that was just shown to the jury probably would have been visible from the exterior of the Bronco with the door closed. Is that correct?
Well, I have no knowledge that that dot was blood, but whatever that is low enough that it would be visible.
Okay. Now, I'd like to get into a little bit of your qualifications and your experience. Sir, did I understand your testimony to indicate that you were actually a police officer at one time?
Yes, it was.
And did you ever achieve the status of detective?
No.
Okay. Were you,
I just wanted to qualify that. At the time, the city of Berkeley, and I think even today, did not have the position of detective. Each patrolman investigated the case that occurred on their beat. The only level of non-uniform investigators was called an inspector, and they did not work in the
When
field.
did
They
Raspberry
coordinated
Beret
cases
come out?
in the department.
okay. And did you have occasion to investigate any homicides as a police officer?
No.
All right. Now, you retired from the Orange County Sheriff's Department in 1989, is that correct?
That's correct.
And now you're doing consulting work,
That's correct.
and that's primarily in laboratory design.
In management and needs assessment, actually. That's probably more in line with what we've been doing lately than the laboratory design.
How many public criminalistics laboratories have consulted you for the purposes of deciding how to redesign or build a laboratory since that time?
Had actually hired me or consulted me? Hired me, two.
Okay. Now, since 1989, how many homicides have you been the primary criminalist who was investigating the crime scene?
None.
And how many crime scenes, homicide crime scenes since 1989, were you a secondary criminalist or assistant criminalist investigating that crime scene?
None.
How many rape crime scene investigations have you participated in as a criminalist since 1989?
None.
Any major crimes or significant crimes since then?
No, none.
Any minor crimes where you've been the criminalist who was investigating the crime scene since 1989?
None.
All right. Now, between the years of 1976 and 1989, you were basically in upper management of the crime laboratory, either the director, or what was the other position that you mentioned when it had another title?
It's the same position, just a different title.
Right. Now, during that period of time, between 1976 and 1989, can you give us the estimation as to the number of homicides where you were the primary criminalist investigating the crime scene?
None.
Well, how many were you assisting in investigating the crime scene during that period of time?
Exact same number. None.
Okay. What about rape cases? How many rape cases were there during that time frame where you were investigating
Still
the crime
talking about 1976 to 1989?
Yes.
None.
scene? Major crimes?
None.
Minor crimes?
None.
Now, you mentioned to us that you had written a book, not a book, you had written a chapter in a book regarding crime scene investigation, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the title of the book again?
Principles of Investigation, I believe.
Now, sir, there are some leading forensic textbooks that cover the subject of crime scene investigation, is that correct?
That's correct.
And some of those are Richard Saperstein's book called Criminalistics. You're familiar with this.
That's correct.
And you've relied on this in forming your opinions about crime scene investigation. Is that correct?
No,
You haven't?
no.
Is there some reason for that?
I don't have it.
Oh, you haven't read what Mr. Saperstein has to say about
No.
crime scene investigation? Isn't he one of the leading authorities?
I don't know.
But you've heard of him, certainly.
Yes, I do. I heard of him.
Okay, and you're familiar with the book entitled Forensic Science and Introduction to Criminalistics by Peter DeForest, Dr. Ganslin, and Lee. Is that correct?
I've read part of that.
And this is considered to be a leading forensic textbook. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And have you relied on portions of this book in forming opinions about crime scene
Portions of
investigation?
it.
All right, we'll get into that a little more later. And you've heard of the book Forensic Science Handbook by Richard Saperstein. Is that correct?
I've heard of it.
And this is a leading textbook that's probably on the shelf of every criminalist, maybe in the country. Is that correct?
It's in our library.
And have you relied on portions of this book in forming opinions about crime scene
No,
investigation?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No,
Well, isn't this one of the leading books discussing forensic evidence?
I don't know,
Why don't you know?
because I haven't read it.
You haven't read any of it?
No.
Well, have you read Richard Saperstein's other book entitled Forensic Science Handbook, Volume 3?
No, I haven't.
Isn't this
Well,
also...
I have read some of that. If that's got a chapter in it by George Sensabaugh.
Well, Mr. Sensabaugh has a chapter in Richard Saperstein's earlier work. Could this be what you're thinking of?
If it's talking about the polymarker likelihood in enzyme typing, yes.
Okay. An earlier work dealing with conventional serology, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
All right. Well, we'll get to that a little bit later. But then the Richard Saperstein Forensic Science Handbook, Volume 3, you don't think you've read this, is this correct?
If it's not the one that has Dr. Sensabaugh's article, that's correct.
But isn't this also a text that would probably be found on the shelf of most criminalists throughout the country?
I'm sure it may be.
Okay. Now, you've talked a little bit about footwear impression evidence in this case, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you know William Bodziak of the FBI.
Yes, I did.
Are you familiar with his book called Footwear Impression Evidence?
Yes, I am.
And have you read at least the portions of this book dealing with crime scene investigation as it relates to footwear?
I've read portions of it. I don't know which section you're specifically referring to.
You don't think that you've read the whole?
I haven't read the whole book.
Have you read entire chapters dealing with crime scene investigation?
No.
All right, and isn't this also a leading book that would probably be a reference that would be consulted by any criminalist who's routinely doing footwear examinations?
Yes,
They probably have this on their shelf as an
I'm sure
ordinary
they do.
reference.
All right, Mr. Goldberg, about 5 minutes.
What?
About 5 minutes.
And are you familiar with Barry Fisher of the crime laboratory here in our county of Los Angeles?
Yes, I am.
And you're familiar with his book, Techniques of Crime Scene Investigation?
Yes, I am.
And have you read this book?
Portions of it.
Okay. And have you relied on portions of this book in forming opinions about crime scene investigation? Barry Fisher's book.
I've considered it, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified about certain techniques like the, I want to be sure that I understand the terminology you used. You talked about a technique that could be used to take dust prints off a substrate, is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you refer to that as?
It's in here, it's a static electrical device that lifts prints.
Oh, the electrostatic dust print
Yes.
lever, lifter. Okay.
Yes.
And is it true that at the time that you were processing crime scenes, that device hadn't even been invented yet?
When I was investigating crime scenes, yes, but not while I was a director of the lab.
Okay. Your Honor, did you want to stop at this point, you said?
No, just finish out the half hour here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the court said that you wanted to stop at 2:30.
I did, but we go by that clock.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right.
Now, you also talked about this course that you've taught at Cal State Long Beach. Is that correct, sir?
Through Cal State Long Beach.
All right. And is this a upper division course for criminalists who are getting a master's or PhD?
I don't believe Cal State offers any such course.
Okay. Is this a course that is primarily geared for criminalists, or one that is primarily geared for police officers and a category of people that we refer to as crime scene technicians?
The course I referred to is the latter. I also taught a course that trained criminalists.
Okay, well, I was talking about the course that you were referring to during the direct examination.
Yeah, I'm still doing that. The course that I taught at Cal State Long Beach for criminalists, I no longer teach.
Okay, but the course that you were referring to in direct examination would then be a course that is primarily geared for what we would, or what you would use as a criminalist, what you would describe as a layperson.
No. I'm sorry.
Don't-
I didn't understand your question. Maybe you should.
Is the course geared for what you would describe as a criminalist as being lay people? In other words, non-criminalists.
No. No, I would describe them as police investigators or crime scene investigators.
Well,
Now,
if you-
some of them are untrained when they come to the class, if that's what you mean by lay people.
Okay, but do you consider a crime scene technician to be a layperson in reference to a criminalist who is considered to be a professional in the area of forensic science?
No, I think many of the field evidence technicians and ID people are professionals. Depends on their time and their training and their experience.
But whatever they are, you would not consider them to be forensic scientists, is that
They're-
correct?
I consider them forensic scientists. I don't consider them criminalists.
You consider police officers to be forensic scientists?
I consider a person who applies scientific techniques at a crime scene, such as fingerprint dusting, collection of searching crime scenes with analytical instruments such as the devices you're talking about, or lasers, or
Well-
other techniques, to be scientists.
Well, at any rate, police officers are not criminalists, is that correct?
Some police officers are also criminalists.
Well, very, very few, right?
Nowadays, very, very few.
And evidence technicians are not criminalists, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you give us, maybe if you can give us a minute-long definition of what an evidence technician is?
A field evidence technician is an individual that is trained in documentation of a crime scene, of recognizing and searching for some of the evidence, and collecting it.
Okay, I'll pick up after. All right, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief mid-afternoon recess. Remember all my admonitions to you. Mr. Regal, you may step down, come back in 15 minutes. We'll stand in recess for 15. In the Simpson matter, let's have the jurors, please. Deputy McNair. All right, Mr. Regal, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Larry Regal is again on the witness stand undergoing cross-examination by Mr. Goldberg. And Mr. Goldberg, you may continue with your cross-examination.
Mr. Regal, where we left off is you had just given us a definition of evidence technician. And is it fair to say that these people are people that do not have criminalistics degrees, but have received some training in how to go to a crime scene and collect evidence?
That's correct.
And is it true that these evidence technicians are used very widely, probably throughout this country in police departments, in collecting evidence at scenes, including homicide scenes?
I believe every type of crime scene.
And that's also true of the sheriff's department when you were working there, is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, is it true that most of the field work that was done by the sheriff's department was done by evidence technicians, not criminalists?
Numerically speaking, yes.
And that was mostly for cost reasons, is that true?
Yes. Not entirely, but for the everyday type of crime scene. For homicides and other more complicated crimes, there very often is a type of evidence that a criminalist has had special training in. For instance, blood spatter interpretation, explosive debris, arson, and drug, clandestine drug manufacturing laboratories that the ID technicians or field evidence technicians haven't had. So that's why they being the criminalists, would go to the more complicated crime scene.
Where there were special types of evidence, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you did-
And special problems.
But you did have evidence technicians, non-criminalists, doing things like collecting blood evidence, didn't you?
Yes.
And you had them collecting evidence that would later on be used for hair and trace analysis.
Yes.
And you then analyzed that kind of evidence, I don't mean you individually, but your lab, and you presented your findings in court, even though it had been collected by an evidence technician, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is it your view that that is acceptable from a forensic standpoint?
If the evidence technician has been trained properly, yes.
Is it also your view, sir, that even a police officer or a police officer is qualified to collect biological evidence that's going to be submitted to the laboratory for analysis?
If they have been trained properly, yes.
And is it also your view that a police officer would be qualified to collect evidence that's later on going to be submitted to the laboratory for hair and trace, such as articles of clothing?
With the same stipulation, yes.
And although it is more expensive, would you agree that it is preferable to send criminalists to do the crime scene investigation as opposed to crime scene technicians?
If the need is there, yes.
Now, getting back to the issue of qualifications, sir, when I asked you about these various books that you, some of which you're familiar with, or many of which you're familiar with or heard of, is the reason for reading these books, this kind of material, is so that a criminalist can maintain current with what is going on in the forensic science community?
Not entirely. Books of this nature are never really current because by the time they're written, new stuff has come out. Journals, such as the journal published by the American Academy and by the even the newsletter of the California Association of Criminalists, and the journal produced in England, the Forensic Science Society's journal in England, are current. They're contemporaneous with what's going on, within the last few months.
But it is important to read the literature, though, to understand what is going on in the forensic science community, what the capabilities are, what the issues are, how to do things,
A
etc.
textbook like this, the type that you refer to, are particularly important for somebody who is being trained or being introduced into the field.
And isn't it also true that in the area of crime scene techniques or crime scene investigation, there aren't a lot of recent articles in the journals with respect to how to investigate a crime scene, because it's really not a hot topic, so to speak, in the forensic science community?
They're more in the British publication than in the American Academy. In the American Academy, they have some case-related articles describing evidence at the scene and things such as that, but most of that is research.
And since you knew that you were going to be testifying here about crime scene investigation, did you feel that it was important to review all of the key literature that's available on the issue of crime scene investigation in preparation for your testimony?
Key literature.
Sustain, rephrase the question.
Well, there are certain books and publications that discuss crime scene processing that are particularly well recognized. Is that correct?
Yes?
And those are the ones that I asked you about here this
Yo,
afternoon.
I've done way,
Did you feel that it was
way
important?
worse for $1,325. I probably still would today. Do way worse for $1,325.
Important to review all that material in preparation for your testimony on the witness stand here today.
No, I didn't.
Okay. And was that because for the $35,000 you didn't feel that this was, that you thought this was just beyond the pale of what you were asked to do here?
Objection, argumentative.
Oh, you can answer the question.
The $35,000 that I've been paid was to do specific functions, to attend specific meetings, to make certain observations. It had nothing to do with reading textbooks.
Okay. Now, in the area of serology, conventional serology, do you consider yourself to be an expert?
In doing the test, no.
Do you consider yourself to be an expert in the area of the polymerase chain reaction test?
In conducting the analysis, no.
And are you an expert in the area of RFLP, DNA analysis?
Again, in conducting the analysis, no.
Do you currently consider yourself to be an expert in the area of hair and trace analysis?
And I don't believe the basic science of hair and trace analysis has progressed much since I stopped doing it. There are some new instrumentations available, but I still consider myself competent in that type of examination if I had the equipment.
When's the last time that when did you stop doing hair and trace analysis?
When I was promoted to the director,
So that was before 1976?
yes.
Okay. So if this jury were interested not in a critique of what happened at the crime scene, but in trying to figure out what the effect was of crime scene processing on the biological evidence in this case, would you agree, sir, that you would not be the appropriate person to be able to tell us that?
Objection, argumentative. I'd like to
Sustain,
refer.
rephrase the question.
Sir, do you consider yourself to be qualified to tell us the effect, if any, that the crime scene investigation had in terms of the actual outcome of the DNA testing in this case?
Yes, I do believe I can answer that question.
You consider yourself to be qualified?
To answer that question, yes.
And have you rendered any analysis in this case about the actual test results and what they either show or don't show?
No, I haven't.
So what you've basically testified to here are things that possibly could have happened during the crime scene processing, is that correct?
In a sense, yes, but not completely. I mean, I'm basing that statement, the statement that I said that I believe I can explain, at least have an understanding why some of this evidence degraded, doesn't require an expertise in knowing how to analyze or to conduct the amplification process of PCR or the analysis of reading the results. I don't believe it requires a knowledge of the finesse of doing the RFLP. It is simply a question of my experience with previous cases where samples were stored in plastic while moist and the results of what happened to that evidence.
You are qualified to tell us that wet blood degrades more quickly than dry blood, is that correct?
In certain conditions, yes.
In certain conditions.
Not in every condition, but in certain conditions.
Okay. But what I'm asking you, sir, is if what we are concerned about are the actual test results themselves. This is something that you did not look into, is that correct?
I did not review in any detail the test results and compare them to any other results. That's correct.
And would you say that the person that would be most qualified to be able to tell us what effect, if any, the crime scene investigation had on the actual test results, I'm not talking about degradation, but the results, would be an individual who is an expert in conventional serology and or DNA evidence?
Well, I certainly think that somebody who has more knowledge about the techniques could add to what I'm saying, but I don't think the basic statement that I'm making is any different.
About degradation?
Yes.
But I'm not asking you about that.
What are you asking me?
I'm asking you about the actual type and results themselves.
When you say the type of results, you mean the specific answer?
Yes. Would you say that someone who is an expert in both in DNA testing and or conventional serology would be in a better position to answer those kinds of questions?
About the results, yes.
All right.
The actual interpreting the dot blots or interpreting the autorads and things such as that, and trying to explain what type of degradation or what degradation would do to affect those, yes.
Well, for instance, let's say that we're interested in the issue of contamination. You're aware that some studies have been done on that issue, aren't you?
Beyond scope.
Well, have you read any studies by the Federal Bureau of Investigation on the issue of sample handling and how it can affect or whether it affects DNA typing results?
Beyond scope.
I'm familiar with many of the programs that were presented at meetings that I attended at the FBI Academy dealing with DNA handling and sampling, but I don't recall anything specifically about what you're asking. I mean, maybe you can amplify or clarify that.
Do you remember a study that had to do with using different kinds of devices like scissors, contaminated scissors, to cut swatches and people coughing over the evidence and various other sample handling
No,
issues?
I'm not familiar with that.
You're not familiar with that?
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you, first of all, Mr. Regal, would you allow the lawyers to finish asking you the question? And Mr. Goldberg, would you allow Mr. Regal to finish his answer before you start to follow up, please?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Take a breath. Proceed.
Oh, thank you. Now, let's get into the issue of collection of evidence. We've heard a lot of testimony in this case about gloves, wearing gloves at a crime scene. Are you generally familiar with that testimony?
Yes.
And do you believe that gloves always have to be worn at a crime scene, whenever someone is actually on the crime scene?
It depends on the nature of the crime scene.
Did you see a picture of what has been testified to as being Mark Furman's hand pointing at a glove?
I did see that picture, yes.
And Mark Furman's hand did not have a glove on it, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
You don't see any problem with that, do you?
If that's all they did was point.
Okay. So the issue that has been made of people wearing gloves under those circumstances in this case is a false issue. Isn't that true?
Argumentative.
But at any rate, sir, if someone is actually standing on a crime scene and not wearing gloves, you do not have a problem with that, is that correct? Even if they're pointing to a piece of evidence.
Yes, I don't have an objection to anybody who is walking into the crime scene and just there momentarily not wearing gloves.
Okay, that's enough
In
for one
fact-
day. We did good. I gotta work a double today. I think I went over because I don't want time to move forward. I don't want to work another double. I just worked a double yesterday. What a blister. Alright, guys. Let's get this day over with. Let's get on with the weekend. I shall see you all again really soon. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. Bye.